Hello viewers, welcome back to another video. It's 4th of July and it's currently 10 p.m. at night, and sorry for previous video guys because it got ended abruptly. I even didn't knew that my phone got I didn't knew that the video paused and I completed a whole 10 pages more, but I'll start from where I left off in that video. I'll start from the part 1. This part today, as you as some of you might know, we were reading the book The Alchemist from the previous videos. If you don't know, then welcome, and I hope you like this today's read. Let's set up the timer for 21 minutes and let's start. The boy's name was Santiago. Dusk, dusk was falling as the boy arrived with his herd at an abandoned church. The roof had fallen in long ago, and an enormous sycamore had grown on the spot where the sacristy had once stood. He decided to spend the night there. He saw to it that all the sheep entered through the ruined gate, and then laid some planks across it to prevent the flock from wandering away during the night. There was no wolves in the region, but once an animal had strayed during the night, and the boy had to spend but once an animal had strayed during the night, and the boy had to spend the searching for it. Entire next day searching for it. He swept the floor with his jacket and and laid lay down using his book he had just finished reading as a pillow. He told himself that he would have to start reading thicker books. They lasted longer and made more comfortable pillows. It was still dark when he awoke, and looking up he could see the stars through the half destroyed roof. I wanted to sleep a little longer, he thought. He had the same he had the same dream that night as a week ago, and once again he had awakened before it ended. He arose and, taking up his crook, began to awaken the sheep that still slept. He had noticed that as soon as he woke up, most of his animal also began to stir. It was as if some mysterious energy bound his life to that of the sheep, and whom he had spent the past 2 years them through the countryside, leading them to the countryside in search of food and water. They are so used to me that they know my schedule, he muttered. Thinking about for a moment, he realized that it could be the other way around, that it was he who had become accustomed to their schedule. But there were certain of them who took a bit longer to awaken. The boy prodded them one by one with his crook, calling each by name. He had always believed that sheep were able to understand what he said. So there were times when he read them parts of his books that he had made an impression that had made an impression on him, or when he would tell them of the loneliness of the or when he would tell them of the loneliness or the happiness of a shepherd in the fields. Sometimes he would comment to them on the things he had seen in the villages they passed. Seen in the villages they passed. But for the past few days he had spoken to them about only one thing: the girl, the daughter of the merchant who lived in the village they would reach in about 4 days. He had been to the village only once the year before. The merchant was the proprietor of a dry goods shop, and he always demanded that the sheep be sheared in his presence, so he would not be cheated. A friend had told the boy about the shop, and he had taken his sheep there. I need to sell some wool. Wool. I need to sell some wool. Wool. I need to sell some wool. 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 I need to sell some wool. The boy told the merchant the shop was busy, and the man asked the shepherd to wait until the afternoon. So the boy sat on the steps of the shop and took a book from his bag. I didn't know shepherds knew how to read, said a girl's voice behind him. The girl was typical of the region of Andalusia, with flowing black hair and the eyes that vaguely recalled the Moorish conquerors. Well, usually I learn more from my sheep than from books, he answered. During the 2 hours that they talked, she told him she was the merchant's daughter, and spoke of the life in the village, where each day was like all the others. The shepherd told her of the Andalusian countryside, and related the news from other towns where he had stopped. It was it was a pleasant change from talking to his sheep. How did you learn to read? The girl asked at one point. Like everybody learns, he said, in school. Well, if you know how to read, why are you just a shepherd? The boy mumbled an answer that allowed him to avoid responding to her question. He was sure the girl would never understand. He went on telling stories about his travels, and his bright Moorish eyes went wide with fear and surprise. As time passed, the boy found himself wishing that the day would never end, and her father would stay busy and keep him waiting for 3 days. He recognized that he was feeling something he had never experienced before, the desire to live in one place forever. The girl with the raven hair, his days would never be the same again. But finally the merchant appeared and asked the boy to shear 4 sheep. He paid for the wool and asked the shepherd to come back the following year. And now it was only 4 days before he would be back in the same village. He was excited and at the same time uneasy. Maybe the girl had already forgotten him. Maybe the girl had already forgotten him. Lots of shepherds passed through selling their wool. It doesn't matter, he said to his sheep. I know other girls in other places. But in his heart, he knew that it did matter, and he knew that shepherds, like seamen and like traveling salesmen, always found a town where there was someone who could make them forget their joys of carefree wandering. The day was dawning, and the shepherd urged his sheep in the direction of the sun. They never have to make any decisions, he thought. Maybe that's why they always stay close to me. The only things that concerned the sheep were food and water. As long as the boy knew how to feed, how to find the best pastures, in Andalusia, they would be his best friends. Yes, their days were all the same, with the seemingly endless hours between sunrise and dusk, and they had never read a book in their young lives, and they had never read a book in their young lives, and didn't understand why when the boy told them about the sights of the cities, they were content with just food and water, and in exchange they generously gave of their wool, their company, and once in a while their meat. If I became a monster today and decided to kill them one by one, they would become aware only after most of the flock had been slaughtered, thought the boy. They trust me, and they have forgotten how to rely on their own instincts because I lead them to nourishment. The boy was surprised at his thoughts. Maybe the church was a sacrament. Maybe the church, with the sacrament flowing from within, had been haunted. It had caused him to have the same dream for a second time, and it was causing him to feel anger towards his faithful companions. He drank a bit of the wine that had remained from his dinner of the night before, and he gathered his jacket closer to his body. He knew that a few hours from now, with the sun at his zenith, the heat would be so great that he wouldn't be able to lead his flock across the field. It was the time of the day when all of the Spain slept during the summer. The heat lasted until nightfall, and all that time he had to carry his jacket. But when he thought to complain about the burden of its weight, he remembered that because he had the jacket, he had withstood the cold of the dawn. We have to be prepared for change, he thought, and he was grateful for the jacket's weight and warmth. The jacket has a purpose. The jacket had a purpose, and so did the boy. So did the boy. His purpose in life was to travel, and after 2 years of walking the Andalusian terrain, he knew all the cities of the region. He was planning on this visit to explain the girl how it was that a simple shepherd knew how to read, that he had attended a seminary until he was 16. His parents wanted him to become a priest, and thereby a source of pride for a simple farm family. They worked hard just to have food and water like the sheep. He had studied Latin, Spanish, and theology, but ever since he had been a child, he had always wanted to know the world, and this was much more important to him than knowing God and learning about man's sins. One afternoon, on a visit to his family, he had summoned up the courage. He had summoned up the courage. He had summoned up the courage to tell his father that he didn't want to become a priest, that he wanted to travel. People from all over the world have passed through this village, son, said his father. They come in search of new things, but when they leave, they are basically the same people they were when they arrived. They climb the mountain to see the castle, and they wind up thinking that the past was better than what we have now. They have blonde hair or dark skin, but basically they are the same as the people who live here, same as the people who live right here. But I like to see the castles in the towns where they live, the boy explained. They come in search of new things, but when they leave, they are basically the same people they were when they arrived. They climb the mountain to see the castle, and they wind up thinking that the past was better than what we have now. They have blonde hair or dark skin, but basically they are all the same. They are the same as the people who live right here, but I like to see the castles in the towns where they live, the boy explained. Those people, when they see our land, say that they would like to live here forever. His father continued, well, I'd like to see the land and how they live, and see how they live, said his son. The people who had come here have a lot of money to spend, so they can afford to travel. Who come here have a lot of money to spend, so they can afford to travel. His father said, amongst us, the only one who travel are the shepherds. Well, then I'll be a shepherd. His father said no more. The next day, he gave his son a pouch that had three ancient Spanish gold coins. I found these one day in the fields. I wanted them to be part of your inheritance, but use them to buy a flock. Take to the fields, and someday you'll learn that our countryside is the best and our women the most beautiful. And he gave the boy his blessing. The boy could see in his father's gaze a desire to be able himself to travel the world, a desire that was still alive despite his father having had to bury it over dozens of years under the burden of struggling for water to drink, food to eat, and the same place to sleep every night of his life. The horizon was tinged with red, and suddenly the sun appeared. The boy thought back to that conversation with his father and felt happy. He had already seen many castles and met many women, but none the equal to the one that awaited him several days hence. He owned a jacket, a book that he could trade for another flock of sheep, but most important, he was able he was able every day to live out his dream. If he were to tire if he were too tired of the Andalusian field, he could sell his sheep and go to the sea. By the time he had enough of the sea, he would already have known other cities, other women, and other chances to be happy. I couldn't have found God in seminary, he thought as he looked at the sunrise. Whenever he could, he sought out new road to travel. He had never been to that ruined church before. In spite of having traveled through those parts many times, the world was huge and inexhaustible. He had only to allow रुक जाओ He had only to allow his sheep to set the route for a while. रुक जाओ He had only to allow his sheep to set the route for a while, and he would discover other interesting things. The problem is that they don't even realize that they are walking a new road every day. Set the route for a while, and you would discover other interesting things. The problem is that they don't even realize they are walking a new road every day. They don't see the fields are new and the seasons change. All they think about is food and water. Maybe we are all that way, the boy mused. Even me, I haven't thought of other women since I met the merchant's daughter. Looking at the sun, he calculated that he would reach Tarifa before midday. There he could exchange his book for a thicker one, fill his wine bottle, shave, and have a haircut. He had to prepare himself for his meeting with the girl, and he didn't want to think about the possibility that some other shepherd with a larger flock of sheep had arrived there before him and asked for her hand. It is the possibility of having a dream come true that makes life interesting, he thought as he looked again at the position of the sun and hurried his pace. Hurried his pace. He had suddenly remembered that in Tarifa there was an old woman who interpreted dreams. The old woman led the boy to a room at the back of her house. It was separated from her living room by a curtain of colored reds. The room furnishing consisted of a table, an image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, and two chairs. The woman sat down and told him to be seated as well. Then she took both of his hands in hers and began quietly to pray. It sounds like a gypsy prayer. The boy had already had experience on the road with gypsies. They also traveled, but they had no flocks of sheep. People said that gypsies spent their lives tricking others. It was also said that they had a pact with the devil, and they kidnapped children and taking them away to their mysterious camps made them their slaves. As a child, the boy who had been frightened to death. As a child, the boy had been the boy had always been frightened to death that he would be captured by gypsies, and this childhood fear returned when the old woman took his hands in hers. But she has the Sacred Heart of Jesus there, he thought, trying to reassure himself. He didn't want his hand to be trembling, showing the old woman that he was fearful. He recited an Our Father silently. Very interesting, said the woman. Very interesting, said the woman, never taking her eyes from the boy's hand. Then she fell silent. Yeah, we read up to page number 11, guys. We have to start from here to tomorrow. It's a nice story. Let's see how it goes. Will he found his Will he find his girl of his dreams? Not his dreams. I have two questions. What is the stream he was talking about? And second, what will happen with him and the girl when he reached to Tulisha? Was this place? This place was Tarifa. Okay, that's it for today, guys. I'll see you tomorrow. Until then, go find your purpose, guys. It's very important.